You're watching me, Shane Snipes, at Sustainable 1000. I'm traveling around the country doing 1,000 interviews across 48 states, and I've had the honor to sit here and chat with one of my new favorite people in Washington, D.C., Ed, whose whole responsibility is theslowcook.com. It's such a great website. We were just live broadcasting a few moments ago on our channel at ustream.tv/sustainable1000, so check that out for the other part of our interview. But I want to continue our conversation talking about what in your mind sort of sets it apart to make a local food choice or a slow food choice.
Well, I think it depends for a lot of people. If you have to have people in your area who are producing local food. In our case, we've decided to do it to some extent ourselves, which makes us a little bit different because we're right in the middle of the city, and we bought this house and it's 100 years old and never had any real landscaping to it, which is kind of unusual. And then the two trees that were on the property died, so we ended up with this big lot wrapping around the corner. And one day I just started going out and planting, a garden. And my wife had sort of other plans for it. She saw kind of formal Victorian garden to, complement the house.
Right.
And so every time I started a new vegetable bed, she was kind of hanging out the window asking me, "What are you doing now?" And that's where the path is supposed to go, or that's where the fountain's supposed to go. And I just kept digging because nothing else was happening, and we ended up with all these vegetable beds that supply actually a great deal of food that we eat. We have about 3 full growing seasons at least, spring, summer, and fall. So that really kind of feeds us in addition to what we get from the meats and dairy products that we get delivered from our local dairy. But for most people, that may not be a viable option. Although we're starting to see a lot more suburban folks, starting gardening and things like that, because when times are tough economically, like they are now, people start to think of ways to economize. So they're getting not only the benefit of sort of food on a budget, but they're getting healthier, much fresher, more nutritious foods that they're growing themselves. And there's really nothing like being able to just walk out in your garden and pick your own tomatoes or cucumbers or herbs or whatever it might be. Even if you're not growing a tremendous amount, it's fantastic food. The flavors you won't taste anywhere else, and a great sense of satisfaction that you get growing your own food.
And one of my new favorite tomatoes,
the Cherokee Purple,
I
yeah,
had
my
tonight.
favorite. Well, there's I'm constantly battling people because all the polls say that the favorite tomato is a Brandywine, which is a fine tomato. I just don't think it's spectacular. And the Cherokee Purple, which has always got my vote, is just a fabulous tomato. And you saw it tonight. I don't think there's any doubt that it's probably the best tomato you've ever eaten.
Yeah. You guys don't know this, but I grew up in the South. Well, a lot of you guys do know that. But growing up in the South, I ate a lot of tomatoes and had a lot of different varieties. We would plant different varieties every year, sometimes heirloom, but mostly different things that my mother had read about or whatever. Anyway, so I've had lots of tomatoes fresh off the vine, and this one that I had tonight was fantastic.
Knock your socks off. But it really raises an interesting point, because we're here to talk about sustainability, which means what are we doing to the planet? What are we doing to try and promote survivability of the planet and reduce carbon footprint and all that stuff? And here we are, practically Halloween, and we're still harvesting tomatoes here in Washington. This is not really normal, okay? We've had tomato season going into October before, but into November, this is kind of weird. So on the one hand, you've got gardeners who are benefiting from climate change, but on the other hand, it's kind of creepy, and maybe not so good that we're able to harvest tomatoes in November in Washington, D.C.
Sure. Well, it goes to show. Well, maybe the ice and the other stuff is going to be melting even more than it was before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we had huge snowstorms in Washington. We had 2 snowstorms, 2 feet each. So we were, up to here in snow over the winter, and now we've had one of the hottest summers, or it was the hottest summer on record in Washington, and a growing season that's now going into November. So this is all happening very fast, and it's a little bit scary.
Yeah.
So.
And in Mid-America, folks have had 500-year floods, 2 of which have happened in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and this recent cyclone, record low pressure over the Midwest. I mean, I kind of tend to think that there's something afoot here, that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, climate change is happening for sure, and everyone else around the world is recognizing that. America, we're coming around to it. It's just taking us a little longer, but that's okay. We'll catch up soon enough. Craig and Neil has a question for you, and his question comes from Wyoming, and it's basically, you talked about the meat earlier in the broadcast. And I'm interested to know what you think sustainable meat is and how it could be more sustainable than something you might buy on the grocery store shelf.
Well, that is such an excellent question and pertinent to me because I've gone on a low-carb diet. I don't subscribe to the mainstream thinking that all of our health problems are attributable to fat. I happen to think that it's probably more the sugar and all the refined carbs that we eat that are responsible for most of our health problems. So we eat quite a lot of meat in our house, and I was, talking about our local dairy being the supplier, but I happen to think that grass-fed, pastured meats are a sustainable option for people who want to eat meat. I recognize that there are a lot of people who think that we shouldn't be eating so much meat, but meat traditionally, well, let me say livestock traditionally has been a really important part of agriculture through our history. The benefit of livestock being able to graze on land that may not be suitable for farming, and thus providing a source of protein and nutrition where we might not be able to grow it, but also producing fertilizer in the form of manure, which has always been just, an invaluable part of the food chain. We can't grow food without it, and we're on an unsustainable path now using fertilizers and pesticides that are totally reliant on fossil fuels. So I think we're in a bit of a dilemma here. I mean, if you get rid of livestock, you eliminate a really important aspect of agriculture that's been with us since, the dawn of agriculture.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get another question. I saw a glimpse of this question before, and I thought it was kind of interesting, so I'm going to see if I can find it. Aaron's question, Aaron G, is in Georgia, and he goes, "Cooking's for girls. Why do you want to cook? Guys shouldn't cook. What do you think of that?"
Where did you get that idea? I suppose that means that, you need to talk to my wife, because she would really set you straight on that. Because I guess that also means that guys shouldn't be doing the dishes, they shouldn't be doing laundry, they shouldn't be cleaning the bathroom, etc., etc. I kind of sympathize a little bit with what you're saying in the sense that, I maintain this garden and all that, and that's mostly what I do. And my wife's not here, is she? And I don't get a lot of credit for that, I don't think, because mostly what I hear about is, why haven't you cleaned the bathroom? Why can't you fold the laundry, et cetera, et cetera? So there's definitely sort of a male-female thing going on there that I sympathize with. But I don't think there's any reason why cooking should be just a female sport. I really enjoy cooking, and since I grow all the food, I mean, there's no reason for me not to cook it. So
Yeah, sure, absolutely. That's awesome. Thanks for that question. I had to ask that question, Aaron, because I love it. You can see the police are coming. I don't know if you guys can catch that on the mic.
we're here in the nation's capital, Washington D.C., right at 13th and Euclid Street. It's a really busy intersection, and you'll hear that a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I used to live on Euclid Street, but Euclid in Miami Beach, actually. All right. James Parrish. His question comes from South Carolina, and it is, how do you think food relates to the election?
Well, it does relate to the election because you have so many. I happen to be more on the liberal side than the conservative side, so I kind of identify the conservative, especially the Tea Party candidates, as being among the so-called climate deniers. In other words, there's nothing wrong. This is not anything we're doing to change the planet, et cetera, et cetera. And that has real consequences for our food down the road, because if we continue down this path of relying completely on fossil fuels for the way we grow our food and transport our food, et cetera, we're going to be in much deeper trouble than we are right now. So if you happen to believe that, I mean, you're voting for those people and you're voting for the anhydrous ammonia means of fertilizing our crops and the moving food from one end of the planet to the other, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the Democratic Party and at least the more liberal point of view is that we do need to think more seriously about growing food closer to home, supporting farmers markets, growing food organically and without all the fossil fuels, et cetera. So I think it does make a difference.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. And thanks so much for that question, too, James. Really interesting. Kat Haber, her question is coming from Alaska, and it seems to me, as I've seen sustainability change and grow, that food is one of the most common issues, or one of the biggest issues that people are talking about these days. Why is that?
Well, because we need food to live. So much of our lives revolves around the food we eat and where we get it and how it is grown. And now we have close to 7 billion people on the planet and growing. And the question is always there, how are these people all going to eat? And if our only means of growing food is dependent on natural gas to make fertilizers and pesticides and fossil fuels to fuel the combines and the tractors and to move grain from here to Africa and to the Far East, etc. How long can we sustain the population that we have on the planet? And don't we need to be thinking about more sustainable means of feeding ourselves so that we have a chance to live on this planet without killing it and us?